Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we have a very special guest, Melissa Sassi. So, Melissa is the global head of IBM HyperProtect Accelerator, which is focused on empowering early stage startups through technology and business acceleration. Before IBM, Melissa spent several years in Microsoft's Airband initiative, where she was an internet and energy access impact investor. Melissa is also the founder and CEO of MentorNations, a youth led digital skills movement that has taught tens of thousands of young people to code across 12 countries. Melissa is the chair of IEEE's Digital Intelligence Initiative and a founding member of the Coalition for Digital Intelligence with the WEF, OECD, IEEE, and DQ Institute, which are all acronyms for very successful and very notable organizations. She holds board positions with TACMIL, a non-profit organization with 30 informal schools in rural Pakistan, and TechWomen.Asia, an Afghanistan-based non-profit organization focused on tech skill building for young Afghani women. Melissa is working towards her PhD, where her research is focused on the digital inclusion of unserved communities. Melissa has given over 100 talks at United Nations events, educational summits, tech conferences, and keynotes in topics such as digital inclusion, women in tech, community building, youth empowerment, imposter syndrome, mentorship, and personal branding. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you very much. And I actually have great news. I have expanded my responsibilities at IBM. So I'm not only a startup boss, but I am also responsible for student experience within our IBM Z division of IBM. So my whole life revolves around working with young people, working with
Yeah,
students to inspire them and empower them with technical skills and early stage startups to help them build and scale. So
that's
yeah,
amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations
thank you.
on that. So, I would love to know a little bit about your journey. I mean, you've had a tremendous journey, a lot of success, but I know you've had a lot of challenges along the way as well. So, whatever you can share, how did you even get started in the tech field and your experience at Microsoft and now at IBM?
Yeah, sure. I was one of those people who went to work, did my thing, got my paycheck, and you know my job didn't fire me up.
I
You
see.
know,
I see.
I mean, I did it because I had to do it,
Mhm.
and you know, I really wanted this career and this life where I woke up and I felt fired up to go to work. Like I
Mhm.
felt, emotionally driven to do
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
for like some greater cause
Mhm.
or good. And I was good at my job, and I, kind of liked what I was doing. It was impactful and interesting, but it didn't fire me up every day.
Mhm.
And I started to think about where did I want to go and who did I want to be, and what might help me get there. And I was working in marketing in an operations role. I was responsible for the creative agency relationships globally at Microsoft, one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I managed our celebrity talent, I managed our Hollywood directors. And you think about that and you're like, wait a second, why didn't that fire you up? Like, that
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
really cool,
Uh-huh,
like
uh-huh.
working with Hollywood
Yeah.
and, all of that kind of stuff. And I wanted to, make more of a social impact. And in my role, I watched us tell stories about people making social impacts in
Mhm,
their
mhm.
lives and for the people
Yeah,
around them. And I felt like I was the operations engine of someone else's story
yeah,
and
yeah,
someone else's life. And I thought, what is my thing? What is my superpower?
yeah.
And I realized that I didn't know, and I started to explore what I really like to do. And I thought, I like education. I like learning. I like empowering people with new skills. I like the tech world. I like empowering women and girls and young people. And I like, startup ecosystem.
Mhm, mhm.
And I made this little like list of the things that I like. And then I compared that to my job and I realized like all those things that I really like, Like none of it had anything to do with my actual job.
Uh-huh.
And I was very thankful, and I still am. I had this mentor at Microsoft who was the head of brand strategy,
Mhm.
and she's now the head of brand strategy at Google. And Susan said to me, you know, let's do a map of what are you good at, what fires you up,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then let's try to map those to some kind of departments,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And what I mean by departments is departments both at Microsoft and then thinking about, functions that might be in other
yeah,
companies, because
yeah.
I wasn't really thinking about leaving Microsoft.
Mhm.
I just, wanted to be fired up in the morning. And if I could stay at
Mhm.
Microsoft, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
And I started to do informationals after I identified those things that I liked. And I realized that there were a number of different teams that I could go and work in. There was a developer advocacy team, and I realized that, well, I don't code. And they wanted people who knew how to code. And so, how
Mhm.
could I be a developer advocate if I don't know how to code? So,
Yeah.
that was kind of, that kind of took that off the list. And I thought,
Mhm.
I'm never going to be a developer advocate because I don't code, And I
Mhm.
felt like, I felt like they thought I was silly. Like, what are you doing here? You're not a developer. Like, how are you going to be a developer advocate? What are you talking
Yeah,
about? Get out of here, clown.
uh-huh.
And, I had some informationals with the education team. And it was kind of like, well, what experience do you have in education? I'm like, well, I am like a lifelong student. I'm working on
Mhm.
my PhD. I have 2 masters. I've spent my entire life being educated.
Mhm.
Yeah, but what education experience do you have? And I'm like, I got nothing.
Mhm.
So good conversations, but didn't really go anywhere. And I talked to the philanthropies organization, and they're like, well, what social impact experience do you have? I've been a volunteer. I didn't have anything.
Mhm.
And so I didn't get very far. Nobody wanted to look at my resume. They were nice to me and they
Yeah,
talked to me, but it didn't go anywhere.
uh-huh.
And so I realized that my pathway to doing that, would be volunteering and taking on stretch assignments with team members inside of Microsoft.
Yes, yes.
And so I connected with an organization called Moving Worlds that focuses on social entrepreneurship and empowering people who might have spare time, people who are on business trips and traveling to far corners of the earth and have a few days to spare during their business trips.
Mhm.
And we created a volunteer opportunity in Tunisia and another one in Egypt. And so I went and I worked with social enterprises. I worked with nonprofits. I worked on education. I worked on tech for good, all in a volunteer capacity, but I got experience, things that I could put on my resume, real practical stuff.
Yeah,
And I started volunteering for the IEEE and working on their internet inclusion initiative because I started to become very interested in digital inclusion after seeing that my daughter didn't have access to tech in her classroom.
wow.
So, fast forward a little bit, I participate in this hackathon at Microsoft. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a developer, I'm not an
Mhm.
engineer,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'd always thought that only developers and engineers could participate in hackathons. And what I learned is that's not the case.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, just like tech companies need all different kinds of people, to help run their business,
Of
whether
course, of
that's
course.
marketing or HR or legal or program management or project management or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when I saw that my daughter didn't have access to tech in her classroom, and I saw all the devices that, Microsoft was giving out to its PC Recycle program, I thought, huh, what if we were to put those devices into the hands of nonprofits and enable,
Yeah,
Satya and his team
yeah.
and all of the Microsoft employees from around the world to empower young people through those devices and load it with content, load it with software, and create a volunteer engagement or a series of volunteer engagements where people would volunteer to load the computers with software.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
at Microsoft, they have a program where in the US, for every hour you spend volunteering for a nonprofit, you track it in the system, and Microsoft gives that nonprofit $25.
Wow.
And so I thought that might be a really cool way to raise money for nonprofits
Yeah,
through
yeah.
volunteerism, give them devices, and also if we did coding camps or that sort of thing, that would also be counted toward volunteerism.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I ended up winning. Our team grew to about 50, 60 different people from around the
Oh, wow.
world.
That's
We won
amazing.
first place in the Inspired Me category worldwide.
Mhm.
I had an opportunity to meet Satya Nadella. I pitched to Satya Nadella and ended up rolling out the first device giving program in the world that was turned into a worldwide policy that's now owned by their philanthropies organization. I am a hidden figure. You will never see my name written about, when
Mhm.
it comes to where did this idea come from? How
Mhm.
did it come about? Why does it exist? And it taught me a lot about, myself, about how do you create your personal brand, how do you manage your personal brand, but how do you use volunteerism and a hackathon to land that next big job.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit, one of the teams that I was volunteering with had a
Mhm.
job opening.
Ah.
And so I applied for it, and I'd
Mhm.
already been volunteering with them for 6 months. So they knew
Yeah.
me,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
went through the application process, and I got the job.
Mhm.
So instead of, being able to, sit there across the table saying, well, I'm really passionate about this, but I
Yeah.
don't have experience,
Yeah.
I could actually say after, let's say 8 months of volunteering and getting experience, that I landed a social impact job that was very different than what I was doing before. And while I was in that job, I started to explore, how could I move into a developer advocacy role? How could I bring digital skills to people without? And we'll talk more about how I actually
Mhm.
became a developer advocate later, but I've
Mhm.
talked enough about my journey into tech.
That's amazing.
That's
Amazing.
kind of where it
You
came
know,
from, really.
one of the things I really take away, and I hope people take away from this, is like a lot of people are frustrated in their jobs, or no, frustration may be a big word, but maybe they're not as satisfied. But I think you took the initiative, you actually followed through, you actually found out what is it that you can do. I mean, there are so many people who find problems and say, oh, this is not for me, I can't move forward. But I think I really like your style of actually figuring out, okay, what is it that I can do, and then going after that, and finding your own path. So that is amazing, and good for you. You did that, and I hope people get inspired by that. But yeah, I mean, I would love to know about how do you even find that passion to help other people, because especially with the level of success that you have achieved, most people are so driven by their own success, by their own
Yeah.
how far they can go in a large company like Microsoft. How did you develop that passion of helping others? That's unique.
So for me, it stems from something that's deeply personal, and something that I sometimes call taking my worst nightmare and turning it into my superpower.
Mhm.
So about 14 years ago, my children and I became victims of parental kidnapping.
No.
And I know that sounds, like everyone's worst nightmare. It
Yeah,
is everyone's worst
of course,
nightmare.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, my worst nightmare is a reality. My
Mhm.
kids are safe and they're healthy and they're normal, adjusted children, but they don't live with me, and I never got them back
Mhm.
for a variety of reasons. I know where they are. I see them as much as I can, despite COVID. Being a little hard
Yeah, yeah.
on the travel side of things. But one day my daughter said to me, and this was when I was still at Microsoft, she said, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft. And I'm like, what do you
Mhm.
mean you're learning Microsoft? And that's her accent. And I
Mhm.
realized that she was learning Office, Microsoft Office, Word exactly is what she was learning. And she didn't have access to her own computer,
Mhm.
and there were like 30, 40 kids in the classroom, sharing that device, old laptop at the front, a projector. And we know that this exists
Yeah,
everywhere
yeah, of
across the
course, yeah,
planet.
yeah,
This is not something unique for where they live, which is
yeah,
Tunisia, so
yeah.
sandwiched in between Algeria and Libya. And I knew that there were many things that I couldn't impact in her life and in their lives, but I knew I work at one of the big tech biggest tech companies on the
Yeah,
planet. If
yeah, yeah,
anybody can get devices into a classroom, it's me. And I had no idea how I was going to do it.
yeah,
So I set on this mission to bring devices into our classroom. And instead of just buying all of the computers, I thought, how can I get a big tech company to care? And what does it take for a big tech company to care? And so I started researching what might be that carrot. And I started realizing that, there are certain things that, would make people care. And I started packaging that up until I got to the point of, being able to understand where devices were, how I could get them, and how I could put them into the hands of young people in Tunisia. We ended up sending, in a collaboration between Microsoft and HP, we sent 400 laptops to
yeah,
20 schools, and it was just really inspiring for me to see, empowering for me to see this, mom who wanted a device for her kid in her
yeah,
classroom. My kids have devices at their
yeah,
house,
yeah,
but I thought, how can any young person be prepared for the future of work and thrive and
yeah,
make meaningful use of the internet if they don't have access to the basic building block of what it means to
yeah,
be successful today
uh-huh.
at work, health wise? You know, we need access to
Yeah, of course, of course,
technology,
of
we
course.
need digital skills.
Yeah,
And so I started that. And then that kind of led to me getting very passionate about digital skill building. And that led to me creating my own company there, where we now have taught tens of thousands of young people to code in 12 countries.
wow,
And it kind of created a bit of a career shift again for me that moved me or farther, moved me closer to what I wanted to do and what I talked about when I sat down with Susan that day and said, I like developer advocacy, I like tech, I like um, digital skill building, I like startups, I like education and young people and women and girls. And I'm happy to say that I now have my dream job.
awesome. That's great. And once again, this is a really good demonstration of not letting anything come in the way, because of most people, especially such a a personal thing, that when they go through something like that, and even everybody has challenges in their lives. Most people will take it and sort of take a step back and say, okay, this is not for me. But I think one thing I appreciate about you is, as you said, like taking the nightmare and turning into a superpower and finding the ways.
Yeah.
So that's quite
I like
inspiring.
to make the impossible possible. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something that I kind of use as my motto. I have a few kind of little sayings that I like. I think one of them is that I believe in making the possible or the impossible possible.
Hmm, hmm.
I think the other saying that I like to use is about being an and not an or, meaning
Yeah,
you don't have to choose between being an entrepreneur and an
yeah,
intrapreneur, meaning someone
yeah,
innovating inside of someone else's company.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can do both.
yeah. That's
You
well said.
shouldn't have, and I'm not saying you should break any non-compete or
Yeah,
whatever kind of moonlighting agreements you have in place with your employer. But I think the days of even having this concept that moonlighting is bad
yeah,
is inaccurate. I think
yeah,
you can be an author, you can be a speaker, you can be an academic, an entrepreneur, an entrepreneur, a CEO. You can be
yeah,
all of these things at the same time. You don't need to choose between this or that. And that's what I mean by being an and not an or.
yeah. That's very well said. Yeah, I mean, especially these days when digitization has taken a sudden leap. All of a sudden, like things which were supposed to take a decade, that happened within a matter of weeks, due to the experience with the pandemic that we are going through. So it's even more important these days for people to adopt technology and be in touch with each other.
You
And
have to,
yeah.
and it's a scary time for many people because I think now, you know, without being able to walk into the classroom in many places around the world And that's especially an issue for the 48% of the world who
Mhm.
lacks access to the internet. And that's the number,
Yeah, yeah.
48%.
Mhm.
And so that means young people are out of school. That means that if you don't have access to the internet, you're
Yeah,
not getting access to the healthcare information you require, the e-government services that might be available. You're not able to work from home. So it's really caused, I think, this big shift in our all of our lives. But
yeah,
I think it's also a kind of determining factor when it comes to, are you a have or
yeah,
are you a have not? And I
yeah,
think it's causing a greater a
yeah.
greater divide, in the world.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And then, not to even mention the social impact and the personal impact that this is having. Your initiative, providing access to the internet, access to technology. A kid who is not in the classroom, an empty mind is only going to think of uh, you know non-productive ways to live their life. And
That's true.
yeah,
One of the things that really inspired me to create my nonprofit, MentorNations, which is the organization that I mentioned. Part of that was to inspire my kids, but also to deter young people from violent extremism.
yeah,
Because if you are, approached to make a certain bad decision, and if you don't feel like you have a future or a
yeah,
place, or you feel like you don't matter and that you don't have control over the outcomes in your life, somebody approaches you to make a bad decision, and you're more apt to do it. But if you have access to education and jobs, or the opportunity to create your own job because you have practical skills,
yeah,
you're going to be less likely to engage in violent extremism or make bad decisions,
yeah.
because you've got a
Of course.
future that matters, and
Yeah,
future you matters.
yeah, yeah. And not only that, I mean, internet provides access to information. I mean, you can get in touch with people from other parts of the world, and when you know other people, you immediately find out that everybody's the same. I mean, most people have the same aspirations for their family, for their future, and nobody's actually out there to get them. So I think that's an amazing thing to provide internet and technology to these kids. And taking it further now, like how did you how are you doing that in IBM? How are you pushing
Yeah.
that cause forward in IBM?
Yeah, so when I first joined IBM, I was responsible for creating a startup program, which I did. I did that last year. It's called the IBM Hyper Protect Accelerator, and it was my vision, my strategy, my ideas. When I first joined IBM, it was like, bring 15 startups onto our platform. Good luck. We'll see you if you have questions. And I was like,
Yeah,
okay, all right, there we go.
yeah.
So I spent a lot of time researching and thinking and talking about things until I, was able to create the accelerator. And that was, the means, for us to bring 15 startups onto our platform.
Mhm.
We recruited 15 startups last year from, I think 8 countries, 6 or 8 countries. The number's escaping me now. This year we added 30 startups. So I have 45 startups in my portfolio. That's fintech, health tech, and insurtech. Um, Startups that are less than a million in revenue and less than 5 years old. And then my GM, my who's that's a pretty senior role
Yeah,
at
yeah,
IBM. You've got
yeah.
one person in between you and the CEO,
Mhm,
Arvind.
mhm.
He said, I want to see 100 startups in our program by the end of next year. So I'll
Yeah.
have 100 startups by the end of next year. I went big recently, a few months ago, because
Mhm.
I'm very passionate about students and technology skill building.
Yeah,
I had, in my free time, been running coding camps and hackathons and doing talks and helping the team to achieve our goals. And I was rocking it. I
yeah,
was a developer advocate. I
yeah.
was doing the thing without having that developer advocacy job title.
Mhm.
And I'm at this event that I was running, and I recognized that we weren't necessarily thinking about the different, what I'll call student personas,
Mhm.
or the different kinds of audiences that we needed to reach. And I felt like we were only reaching one specific audience, but not nurturing others to become that audience, if you
I see.
will.
I see. I
You
see.
know, we were nurturing our fans, but we weren't nurturing new audiences or people who, might not
Yeah.
think tech is
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
And I went out of turn. I shared a bunch of ideas and strategies. And when I say I went out of turn, I skipped over my boss. I
I
skipped over
see.
my boss's boss, and I went straight to my boss's boss's boss.
Uh-huh.
hmm I
Wow.
texted her and I said, I have some ideas. I'd like to share them with you. It's a little bit of good, bad, and ugly.
Uh-huh.
Is there a safe space for me to break the hierarchy
Mhm.
and share these with you?
Mhm.
She
Wow.
said, let's meet on Friday.
That's
So
amazing.
I created an entire strategy, a
Mhm.
campaign, of what we could do, what we should do, what we could reach, how much money I needed to do it. On Monday, she gave me more money than I had asked for, and
Wow.
she reorged our entire team. So I now, again, have, not just the purview over the entrepreneur segment of our company within
Mhm.
my division, but student. And so I moved from having conversations in my last role of, or my last company,
Yeah.
how can you be a developer advocate? You're not a
Yeah. Yeah.
developer. To now I'm a developer advocate, and I own an entire, portfolio of
Mhm.
audiences, from student to entrepreneur, working with chief technical officers, working with developers. I just know when my skis get too far out in front of me
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and when I need to bring somebody else in. But I have unique skill sets that other people don't have. Other people have unique skill sets that I don't have. And so we blend ourselves together and make us into a super employee.
That's great. And I wanna, before we go further, I wanna talk about this fancy title that you
The
have,
chief
and there's a,
penguin, right?
yeah, yeah, because I have worked with IBM, I have worked with Microsoft. I know how protective they are about these things. So that's an interesting story I'd like to share with the audience. So can you
Yeah.
tell us what is your title at IBM? How did you even come up with that?
Yeah. So I am the chief penguin of IBM Z.
Mhm.
And how that came about is when I was working at Microsoft, one of my good friends, she had this job title, the chief ninja cat.
Yeah.
Chief Ninja Cat. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool. I want to do that. And, I was working in a team that was much more conservative than her team. And there was like no way I could call myself the Chief Ninja Cat or any other animal.
Mhm.
My
Mhm.
job title was my job title,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had like, a sandbox that I had to stay in. My
Yeah.
job was interesting, but I had a sandbox and I had to stay in
Yeah.
my sandbox. I could color outside of the lines a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I met this guy with this Twitter handle called Thready the T Rex, and he had these dinosaurs, and he was doing all these cool things at Microsoft with dinosaurs. I'm like, man, we've got a ninja cat, we got a dinosaur, I got nothing,
Yeah.
Ended up leaving Microsoft, not because I wasn't the ninja cat or the T
Yeah.
Rex, because I got a rad, awesome new
Yeah. Yeah.
job at
Yeah.
at, at IBM, and
Mhm.
I was in Pakistan. I was in Karachi, Pakistan for work, and I met this woman named Jihan Ara.
Uh-huh.
And Jihan has this incubator, accelerator in Karachi called the Nest IO. It's funded
Uh-huh.
by Google.
Uh-huh.
And her job title is the big bird. And I'm like, man, I got a bird, I got a ninja cat, I got a T Rex, I got nothing. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I am coming up with a job title. I am I'm gonna figure it out. Now I gotta figure out what animal I want. And so I started
Yeah.
thinking about things a little bit, and I started thinking about how IBM, purchased Red Hat. Red Hat is known for open source technology, and the
Yeah.
penguin is tied to open source.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought that's my animal title. And then I was thinking about queen and king, and I don't know. Then it went to no, no, it's chief.
Uh-huh.
So I started putting it on my signature line. I started putting it in different in my Twitter
Yeah.
bio and my LinkedIn bio, and And then I was running this hackathon, and the UN wrote an article and in UN News, and it made the homepage of UN News. It was this
Wow.
really big hackathon that I did in collaboration with UNESCO called Code the Curve. That was all about using technology and data science to fight back against COVID-19. And they wrote this article, and in there they called me IBM Z's chief penguin. So I was
Wow.
like, man, you know what? The UN called me the chief penguin.
Yeah.
That's it. And so
Yeah.
now, whenever anybody introduces me, they always introduce me as the chief penguin. Even my boss, when she's filling out like
Yeah.
a speaker
Yeah.
bio thing, and she has to put my job title, like everybody puts chief penguin.
Yeah. Nice. That's
I
well
even
done.
no, I got one more for you. I even
Uh,
changed it in our corporate directory. Like when
wow.
you're an employee, you have a
Yeah.
directory of the names and employees and stuff. I went in there and I'm like,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
amazing. Yeah. Nothing can stop you, I guess.
yeah, the
Um,
impossible is possible.
yeah. So let's talk about startups a little bit first. So what do you do with startups? How do you pick them? And I mean, what is your role in this accelerator?
Yeah, so we focus on fintech, health tech, and insurtech companies with high levels of sensitive information, so personally identifiable information,
Mhm.
healthcare records at the individual level,
Yeah.
financial records, insurance records, the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that you want to make sure that you're
Yeah.
protecting with the greatest sense of data protection, privacy, and
Yeah.
security.
Yeah.
So I go through this recruiting process that kicks off in April. I work with an accelerator called Village Capital. Startups get 1 year of business mentorships. That's like investment readiness, that sort of thing. And then 2 years of technical mentorship, which happens through, my cloud solution architect, or I should say my chief technical penguin, because that's his job
Yeah.
title,
I see.
technical penguin. Yep.
Uh, uh,
Um, Really great guy, super knowledgeable when it comes to cloud architecture. We help the startups to really onboard into the IBM ecosystem. They gain access to a product called IBM Cloud Hyperprotect Services that's all about putting your data into secure enclaves.
mhm.
And it's really kind of, I don't know, the Fort Knox
Yeah.
of technology, if you will, the Fort Knox of data protection, privacy, and security.
That's
Like
awesome.
you're not breaking into it because you're working off
Yeah.
of, you know, a machine that's so secure, and it's got uptime of 99% and then a gazillion nines after
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we help them with their cloud journey. We help them with their future state architecture. We think about how can we enable them to utilize really interesting products like Watson, or AI, machine learning,
Yeah.
blockchain, whatever's relevant for that particular startup. And our whole mission is, how do we bring them into our ecosystem? How do we help them to build and scale? How do we go to market together? How do we really think about going into business as collaborators, as partners, versus it being a vendor relationship.
Yeah.
I don't want to be their cloud vendor.
Yeah.
I want to go to business together. And I want to get startups before they're something, before they're big, before
Yeah.
they've become
Yeah.
whatever it is that they're going to become. And we know that 80 to 90% of startups fail.
Yeah.
Um, but it is my hope that, many of our startups succeed. One of my startups just landed 3.5 million or 4.5, something like that. I can't remember the number, but about $4 million in funding that just got announced last week.
Wow.
They also won a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Really exciting. I've got just some real cool news that's
Yeah.
happening,
That's
with
amazing.
many of our startups. And we'll see what's going to happen with this cohort. I'm still getting to
Yeah.
know them.
Yeah.
And, we added 30. So that's
Yeah.
45 startups. It's
Yeah. Of
really
course.
hard to figure
Yeah.
out like who's
Yeah.
doing what.
That's
But
amazing. Yeah. No,
yeah.
I mean, like as I said, like I have collaborated and worked with IBM on a number of projects, and I mean, some of the technologies like IBM Watson, Hyperledger. I mean, they are really, really cutting edge technologies. that as far as I know, there's a little competition out there from even giants like Amazon and Microsoft. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that from a cloud computing perspective, you've got Azure, you've got AWS, you've got GCP, we've got IBM's cloud. I think what makes this program special is that that product that I mentioned, it's not something that's going to be relevant for everyone, but
yeah,
with the other cloud providers, your cloud administrators have access to your keys. We do
yeah,
not.
yeah,
When it's running on our Linux One machines, which again is all about data protection, privacy, and security.
mhm,
And we give out $120,000 in cloud credits to our startups, so that part's pretty cool.
yeah,
But I think the real differentiator is one, that product, because your data is protected in these secure enclaves. So
mhm,
even if I wanted to get access to it, I can't. Even
mhm,
if a nefarious character sends me this really clever
yeah,
email, and let's say I'm the smartest information security person out there, if I made a mistake by accident or on purpose, I still can't get access to it. It is incredibly secure,
yeah,
from an encryption standpoint, that sets itself apart. So I think that's one thing. But again, if you're not dealing with sensitive data, you might not care about having the Fort
yeah,
Knox. But I
yeah,
believe that there is a fundamental disconnect between the regulatory requirements in many countries from around the world and the ability for companies to take our data without our knowledge and do things with it that we have no idea.
yeah,
And I also feel that many companies are also making decisions purely based on cost that is not looking at the, let's say, priorities of the customer.
mhm,
How many of us go and demand for a certain level of encryption or security? Like, most of us, who do we talk to? What do
yeah,
you
of
do?
course, yeah,
Do you
yeah,
even know where your data's going?
yeah,
We've have these things called data privacy passports that, kind of essentially allow you to control your data. But
mhm,
not a lot of companies, I shouldn't say not a lot of companies, in certain industries, they're not necessarily paying attention to the technology that's
yeah,
best in
yeah,
class for
yeah,
protecting your data.
of
And
course,
what do
of
you
course.
do as a consumer?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of security issues in my adventures with technology, and I think overall, I think the key here is that most of the executives are not really up to speed on all the technical
That's
matters.
right. And I
Right?
think that's why, technologists need to improve upon their ability to speak human.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
right.
um, I think that I think that there are often disconnects between business and technology, and how do you
Mhm.
take deeply technical terms and make them relevant and human and meaningful, so that when a business leader needs to make a certain decision,
Yeah,
he truly understands the trade-offs of doing that.
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
The true, so
if
true.
you're managing your business based on policy instead of technology, that's a
Yeah,
problem, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, of course. Policy needs to be informed with facts, so that's for sure. And you touch upon this cool acronym, like the human side of things. And you're dealing with 45 startups. You're hosting events like there is no tomorrow. I mean, I go through your social media feed. There's like every single day there are like tons of events you're hosting. How do you do all this? Like, how do you manage all this and still stay sane?
It's hard, and I will tell you, I'm stretching myself too thin right now. Right now is the most I've ever worked in my entire life, and it's not sustainable. And I
Mhm.
know that. I'm kind of finishing up a few things that I need to do until the um, the 17th of January. And after the 17th of January, I am going to take a 2-week vacation.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I'm going to turn off. Nobody's bothering. Actually, I shouldn't say the 17th, after the 18th. the
I
18th.
see.
Because I have an event on the 18th.
I see. I see.
After the 18th, I'm going to take vacation. I'm going to go to the beach. I am going to relax. I'm going to turn off my devices, and I'm not going to be available for
That's
a couple weeks. But I'm, in reality, I have a wonderful team who helps to empower me, inspire me, take some of the load off of my shoulders. But I do have too much on my
yeah.
shoulders right now. And right now, I am overdoing it. I am stretched too thin, and everyone is worried I'm going to burn out, you know. And I'm worried I'm going to burn out too. So I know that I've got to push very hard to achieve some year-end goals for work, and I've got some things that I need to do for work by the 17th, and then I'm going to go on vacation, and then I can sit back and kind of strategize a little bit, and
Yeah.
cut down on the number of events that I'm doing. I think when you go big to propose a new idea and it's game changing
Yeah.
and it's different, when you share that idea, you're if your boss says yes when you share
Yeah.
that idea, like, who's going to implement it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
Yeah. That's right.
right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so I kind of created a bit of my own, I don't know, my own dog food. I'm now eating my own dog food.
Wow.
So it's kind of a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in the sense of I pitched an idea and I landed it. And
Mhm.
then now I have to execute it knowing that it's a pretty cool idea. So now I got to
Yeah.
do it. So there you go.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm always inspired by the passion that you put into your work, and obviously we are going to help in certain way to release some of that pressure. And I'm really glad you're planning that vacation. I think I need to do the same for myself.
Yeah.
Uh, but before that, let's talk about this event that is happening. Tell us a little bit about that. How did it come about, and what is so special about that event?
So I guess the question is, I have a lot of events that I'm doing.
Mhm.
So tell me, which one do you want to talk about?
Well, I think the one that we are working on
Okay,
together, that
good. I was hoping
will.
that's what you were going to say.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
the reason I mentioned that is I just had a big event yesterday with that had thousands of registrations to it, and today I just shared a blog about that event. So I've been thinking about that.
yeah.
But no, I'm really, really excited for our collaboration. I'm already excited. It's been really wonderful so far. So the event, as you know, which many of you who are watching may not know, it's called the Human Code.
Hmm.
The Human Code. And if we think about it, how many of you hear the word computer science and think, some of you are like, "Oh, I love computer science," and they're out there coding and they've got bunch of monitors.
Hmm.
Others are thinking, "I'm not a techie,"
Yeah,
or "I'm
yeah,
not technical," or "No, I couldn't figure that out. It's hard."
yeah,
The Human Code is about inspiring new people to discover unique pathways into tech, non traditional pathways into tech.
wow,
It's about bringing the arts together with that scary thing called computer science to not make it so scary, so that it can be seen as something approachable, something that is like learning another language. Because I believe that the way that computer science has been taught has been fundamentally wrong.
hmm,
I believe that it should be taught like an art. I believe it is an art. I
yeah,
also believe that it should be taught like a language. And when
yeah,
I tell you that computer science is really just another language, people are like, really?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
it's just another language.
Mhm.
It's like learning French. Okay, a little bit different, but you're using the language of computers, and there are many languages of computers to instruct and advise and tell that computer what to do. So
Yeah,
at this event, we're going to talk about and demonstrate in a really interactive and an experiential way the connection between tech and the arts. So we're going to dive into music. We are going to take song lyrics and we're going to use a machine learning model running on IBM Z. So my
Wow.
crew, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and we're going to evolve those song lyrics into something new and unique and different, and use it as a tool for artists, for
Nice,
songwriters to
nice.
create song lyrics.
Hmm.
We're going to have a jam session with those song lyrics. Frank Zappa's son, Amit,
Hmm.
is joining us. So for those
Wow.
of you who are fans of music, that may be a name you know. I've got some other people we're in discussions with. It hasn't landed 100% yet, so I will hold off from telling you, who specifically we're talking to there. We are going to dance with a celebrity Bollywood choreographer and dancer, Terrence Lewis. And I'm
Hmm.
really excited about that. So, for anyone who is a Bollywood fan, we are going to dance with Terrence Lewis. And what we're going to do is we are going to talk about the tie between choreography dance and computational thinking. It's going to
Wow.
be fun. Oh, he's going to code too. He's
Yeah.
going to code. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
He may
I
not be a
could.
good coder, but he's going to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
Um,
I'm very much looking forward to. I can code very well. I cannot dance at all. So I'm really looking forward to how this is going to come together.
I know, me too. We're going to do spoken word poetry,
Mhm.
and um, we are going to bring the poem to life on
Wow.
your screen and through spoken word. So
Nice,
that's going to be interesting. We are also going to talk about how you can tell your story, your coding story.
nice.
What inspired you to learn about tech? What would you like to build? What would you like to create? What would you like to do? What would you like to make? And how would you like to transform the world through
Nice.
technology? So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Very, very exciting. So how who is this for? Where are we hosting it? And how
so
can
it'll be
people find
online.
out?
It'll be
Yeah,
online. It'll be free. It'll be virtual. So come sing with us. Come dance with us. Come code with us. Come create with us. Come change the world with us.
that's awesome.
January 9th. January 9th. We are still kind of firming up a few details, so we're not ready for you to register yet. So use this as your teaser to get ready to dance, code, be inspired,
That's
find a
amazing.
new career path, and really sing and dance and have a good time with us.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'll drop a link to the Facebook group that we have set up for anybody who wants to join. Especially people who are looking for, uh, you know, to find out what's next in their life. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty going on right now with the institutions shut down, and a lot of sort of changes happening. So, I think this is a really good opportunity for people to come together, look at this. Um, Look at this career option in a fun way, in a non sort of threatening way, and in a more fun way. So
Yeah,
my
it's going
team
to be a
will.
lot of fun.
Yeah,
Most people
yeah.
have fun at my events.
Mhm.
I'm told that I put on a pretty good event.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I'll give you an example. We had an event yesterday. We had a dog fashion show.
Wow.
Uh-huh. We had a dog fashion show. We had a dog who was dressed up like Santa, like a big puffy
Yeah,
or a
yeah,
little
yeah.
puffy dog with Santa costume on. And then I had a sequin scarf that matched my dog.
Wow. Oh yeah, I saw that photo on Facebook.
Yeah. And that last event that we did, me and my 16-year-old mentor led it.
Mhm.
Yes, I have a 16-year-old mentor.
Nice, nice, nice. That's great. Yeah, I mean, the whole experience of organizing it with IBM and working with you, it's been an amazing journey so far, and I hope people take advantage of this. It's amazing that IBM is providing all this information for absolutely no cost, and people get to experience these huge names and huge celebrities and have fun with them, one-on-one interaction with them. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you have never saw yourself as someone, who is technical, and you want to come and learn a few things, we're going to do a hands-on coding camp for beginners. And if you know nothing about computer science at all, and it sounds scary and it sounds frightening and it sounds like it's not for you, join us and check it out.
Yeah,
What do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose.
yeah.
Plus, you might get to have a good time when we do our dance off.
For sure, for sure. Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. I think we went way over time, but I mean, this conversation was exceptionally entertaining and educational. So thank
Hey,
you.
I'm a talker. It's okay.
All right, great. Well, as I said, I'll put on those links for people to join the group, and
Okay.
we'll see you
Yeah,
there.
join the group. That's the best way to find out about what we have cooking.
Yeah, yeah,
So, please join. It would mean a lot to us both personally and professionally.
yeah. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.